Since 2024, Candace Owens has been on her own. She's done something that I've never seen anybody do on social media: have a successful career after being blackballed by those who support Israel. Remember, Candace Owens was over on the Daily Wire when she fell out with Ben Shapiro and then was fired. And then I thought that was the end of her career. She took some time off to recalibrate, and when she came back, it was crazy. Candace Owens had a breakout 2024, and if you can even look at her now in 2025, Candace Owens is bigger than ever. It's almost like getting fired from the Daily Wire really put a battery in her back. And she largely hasn't paid that much of a price in America as far as her visibility being seen or her having to apologize. But then again, you got to understand, sometimes your punishments come elsewhere. Now, back in 2021, Candace Owens spoke in a very interesting way about Australia.
When do we deploy troops to Australia? When do we invade Australia and free an oppressed people who are suffering under a totalitarian regime? When do we spend trillions of dollars to spread democracy in Australia? Australia currently, make no mistake, is a tyrannical police state. Its citizens are quite literally being imprisoned against their will. So when do we deploy?
She basically said that Australia was, kind of closed off. Australia needs to be rescued. I believe she said this when she was on the Daily Wire and still supporting Israel, right? But then Candace Owens would want to go to Australia after falling out with the Daily Wire. And this is what happened.
This, by the way, is a perfect time to tell you an amazing update for those of you that knew I'm going on tour in New Zealand and I'm going on tour in Australia. Well, the bad news is that we have to bump that tour to the fall, but the good news is the reason why. We appealed our case, to the High Court, which is essentially their Supreme Court. And we just heard back that the full bench wants to sit this, meaning the entire court, rather than just getting a judge or getting someone to hear it. They're not only accepting this case, but the full Supreme Court, if you will, of Australia is going to hear this case, which will be coming up soon. And so that case, if you would like to follow it, which is something that I'm deeply honored that I am going to be the subject of this case. I won't be able to be there for the actual court case because I can't get into the country, but it is Candace Owens Farmer versus the Minister of Affairs versus the Commonwealth of Australia.
What was the reason that was given as to why Candace Owens was no longer allowed?
And if she's getting barred from Australia because of speaking, because of doing her job, I think we ought to be worried about that. Now, what did the court cite as the reason for why they weren't letting her in? They said that she didn't pass the character test, and they also said that she would incite discord. Now, the definition of discord, I'm not sure if you know this, is simply people disagreeing. What is wrong with that? That is what we need. And if Candace is wrong about something, then discord is the way to figure that out. To have two disagreeing ideas come together and the truth to come out on top.
Of course, she was not allowed into Australia because of a bad character flaw. All right. And this is something that a lot of people don't really understand. But Candace Owens, don't get me wrong, she can say whatever she wants to say in America, and America cannot ban her from coming in. But really, they're saying that Candace Owens has talked about blacks in the past. She's talked about the LGBTQ. But the one group of people that stuck out to me was Israel. Right? And what's happening now is Candace Owens, if she wants to monetize her audience in certain places across the world, now you're going to be facing that blockade that Israel may have some influence over, okay? Australia is a country that Israel has a significant amount of influence over, all right? Also, countries in Europe, Candace Owens faces some challenges there. So the more that Candace Owens wants to go out and do things around the world, not only is it just dangerous going to these places, but also they're going to tell them no. Because the reality is this: if any country were to welcome Candace Owens, and that country is a first world country, and you support Israel anyway, they're going to call you and say, hey, what's going on with you? All right. So that country may or may not have a big problem with you, but they're probably going to be forced to have a problem with you because Israel is going to call and check. I'm like, yo, You gonna let Candace Owens coming in once she said this about us? And this is the pretty much answer. Nobody's gonna risk their geopolitics just to make you happy. And ultimately, this is going to be your reality.
So Candace Owens tried to go to Australia and Australia straight up said no. Her visa was literally rejected on the grounds of inciting discord, which is the bureaucratic way of saying, we've seen your YouTube channel. Now, she did actually try to appeal this decision, but the High Courts of Australia came back, said nope, and stamped the ban in permanent ink. The reasoning, her history of hate speech, misinformation, and comments that fuel division. Now, this is where the irony really hits, because this is the same woman who built her entire brand on mocking people for being too sensitive, crying about cancel culture and screaming about accountability. But the second that accountability shows up wearing an Australian badge, suddenly it's censorship and tyranny. And she spent literal years telling other countries to tighten up their borders, but the second that one closes on her, it's oppression. It's the classic far-right paradox: freedom of speech for me, but strict borders for everybody else until the border says no to you. So yeah, Candace Owens just found out the hard way. You can't preach about border control and then cry when one controls you.
Now, again, everything has consequences, and I know standing up for the truth for certain people, it is where it's at. I get that, people gotta do what they gotta do. And Candace is an adult, and I can't tell her how to feel anyway about, Israel. And I know a lot of people don't have any comfort in Israel. However, this is what happened. I remember when I think Brother Tariq in 2020, I want to say 2021, he had a Hidden Colors premiered in the UK, and it was BS as to why he couldn't come in there. But he was banned. He couldn't come to the UK because of possibly inciting a riot. And again, I don't think that, Tariq Nasheed was even saying anything about the Jews or anything that was crazy at the time. They just didn't allow him to come in. So imagine Candace Owens where, you're basically saying that there is some implication with Charlie Kirk's murder and it's tied to Israel. And then you expect that some of these people are going to allow you to come in. Now, on the flip side, what can happen is the more Candace Owens is, banned from these places, or these things are going to be upheld, it's probably going to grow her audience. Okay, it's probably going to grow what she's doing. And if I'm her, you probably don't want to be even traveling right now. Like I said, some of the claims that she's making probably don't need to travel. But this is what happens. Like, once you get into a geopolitical realm and you're talking about powerful people, powerful country, implicating billionaires, nobody will play fair with you if they feel, it's not gonna happen. That'll be like me criticizing, Qatar, Dubai, and we have some level of a opportunity to go out there and have a podcast, and they find out they're not gonna let you in the country ever. You're banned forever. That's how it works. You know what I mean? And you can't argue that you have a human right to free speech. You may think you have that right in America, and you do have it in America. You don't have those rights nowhere else. You just don't. And a lot of Americans gonna have to understand that. What you have in America, nobody gotta acknowledge that any place else. The only people that owe you something is the states. And that can hurt your ability to sell. It can hurt your ability to have money. It can hurt your ability to do anything, any place else. Nobody will care, And you gotta be okay with that. If you okay with that, that's fine. But I agree with the young lady. Is you can't, you're not able to say that, I'm a victim of free speech and all this other stuff, and and they're doing this and they're doing that. Like, you just can't say that, because nobody really, again, nobody owes you anything. I've lived in places and currently live in a place where saying whatever the hell you want about certain people is gonna come right with some level of retribution if it's too bad, because that's just how certain countries work in that part of the world. Also, countries don't have an equivalent of the U.S. First Amendment that states the right to free speech. Okay, just because they're democracies doesn't mean that. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson back at it again with another episode of the Celebrity Drunk. Put you for all that you do, subscribe to the bell. We're out.